So today we will be talking about ELISA and radioimmunoassay. Both are immunological techniques used quite extensively. ELISA for a lot of disease detection. It's basically the principle behind both of them are antigen and antibody interaction. This technique is used to detect, quantify the strength of interaction, and principle is that you use a modified secondary antibody, which can be radioactive or it can be tagged with a fluorescent dye. So result is that after the primary antibody binds, and to that primary antibody, a secondary antibody will bind, like a Western blotting. And that secondary antibody has got a fluorescent dye, or it is radioactive, or whatever it is. So immediately you can detect. So detect the presence, but you can also detect the quantity of or the strength of binding. This also can be detected. So duto Shreyash has come. Hmm. So you can detect the amount, the strength of the binding. The stronger the binding, the more severe, the more secondary antibody and severe light can be got. And the less it is, the less weaker the binding. So this ELISA can be, there are two different types of ELISA which you can use. So let us see it from the slides. I don't know if I've opened or no, I have not opened it. ELISA, open with other application, WPS PDF select. এসছে, দাঁড়াও এবারে শেয়ার করব। Share your entire screen. Yes. Hmm. Now it is visible. So basically, the what you use, ELISA, is these plates. They are known as micro titer plates. There are you can have them as 96 well plates, or you can have them as 384 well plates. এরকমই সাইজ হবে। হ্যাঁ, এই এই এইরকম সাইজ হবে হাতে। হাতটা দেখছো এরকম রাফলি এই সাইজে হয়। So 96 এতে you pipette more, in 384 wells you pipette less. So you can do a lot of studies, and then there is a machine which will based on the basis of spectroscopy, it will measure the fluorescent or color or whatever which develops. So you can see these plates, right? दिख रहा है plate?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. These are the plates. They are put inside a spectrophotometer type of ELISA machine. They will detect the intensity of binding. Just hold on a minute. Somebody is entering. Sound সুন্দর। Sound সুন্দর এসে গেছে। Okay. So today we will talk about ELISA overview, principle, protocols, different types, material required, the merits, demerits, application. So basically, the short form is enzyme linked immunosorbent assay, ELISA. So it was coined by Engvall and Perlman in 1971. It is a quantitative technique used in immunology to detect the presence of an antibody or an antigen in sample. So if you have tuberculosis, with the antibody of tuberculosis from the sputum, you can detect how much tuberculosis you have. Qualitative, you can do it by anything, but by this you can measure the intensity of the binding. Why is it termed ELISA? The antigen of interest is adsorbed onto a surface sorbent. So on the well, there is a sorbent is there on top of this. Your antigen is absorbed, and the antigen is recognized only by the specific antibody. You know that that antigen has got its specific antibody. That antigen can be your sputum, it can be blood, whatever. Then this primary antibody, it is recognized by a second antibody, which is against the FC portion, and that is linked. It has got an enzyme linked to it. And then after that, you add a substrate to it, and because that enzyme will convert it, that substrate into a product, and then that product is a colored product. So depending upon the strength of binding, the color is more, and this machine is going to measure the intensity of color like a spectrophotometer. So it is based on the specific interaction between antigen and their corresponding antibody. One of the immunoreactant is coated on a solid phase support such as polycarbonate. So on the bottom of these wells, 96 well plates, you have a polycarbonate coating. On top of it, the antigen is absorbed in these microvwells. To the respective antibody or antigen is added. So if you coat an antibody, then you have to give antigen. If you coat an antigen, then you have to add antibody. To the antibody antigen complex formed, an enzyme linked antibody is attached. A colorless substance is added to the well. This substance is a substrate for the enzyme which catalyzes the conversion of colorless substance to colored product. So depending on the intensity of color, the more this is, the more is the binding. So this is the basic principle. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
So,
sir.
who has not understood? Everybody understood. Okay. So you need a test sample. It can be a spit. It can be your during COVID-19 from your nose. Nose. They can take a sample antigen. You need the antibody antigen, and you need polystyrene micro titer plates. Those 96 well plates or 384 well plates. They are known as polystyrene buffer plates. You need a blocking buffer. So after you coat it with your antigen or antibody, the plate, all the uneven surface needs to be blocked. You can use bovine serum albumin BSA solution, or you can use 5% milk. 5%, or some people, I used to use 10% milk. The time taken was small, and then you have to wash. You need a washing buffer, and this washing buffer is normally phosphate buffered saline. And you need the substrate, and you need the enzyme. You need all these things for ELISA. Enzymes which are used are horseradish peroxidase, very commonly used. If you add a substrate, horseradish, it will give a light, emit a light, this peroxidase. They use alkaline phosphatase, beta galactosidase. These are all the enzymes which are used. So load samples in triplicates into wells. So normally 3 samples are there. You take it in triplicates. The 3 must give similar readings. Otherwise, it becomes an outlier. It should be reproducible. Then primary antibody diya, then to that you add secondary antibody, and then enzyme, and then you read them. So this is the same, the enzyme substrate. The substrate is converted into a colored product which is measured. The enzyme substrate should be colorless. Otherwise, it will interfere with the color of the product. So there are 3 types: indirect ELISA, sandwich ELISA, and competitive ELISA. In indirect ELISA, what happens? The antigen is coated in these wells. Washed, you add the primary antibody, it is bound. Then you wash and add the enzyme secondary antibody. And you wash and add the substrate, and you measure the color. In salide, the sandwich ELISA, you have the antibody which is coated below. Wash, then you add the antigen. থুতু ফেললে আগে অ্যান্টিবডি কোটেড প্লেটের মধ্যে থুতুটা ফেললে থুতু স্যাম্পলটা ফেললে, and then you wash and add the secondary antibody to this, and then you add the substrate and you measure the color. তো প্রথমটাতে কি অ্যান্টিজেন দিলে, পরেরটাতে অ্যান্টিবডি দিলে। কম্পিটিটিভ এলাইজাতে কি করলে, you incubate the antibody with the antigen to be measured, অ্যান্টিজেন অ্যান্টিবডি মিক্সচার এখানে দিলে, wash, then you add both of them are added together. Then you add secondary enzyme, wash, and then you get the color. ঠিক আছে, clear?
सर कॉम्पिटेटिव वाला एक बार फिर
Yes,
से
sir.
बोले ना।
Incubate antibody with antigen. एक ट्यूब में एंटीजन और एंटीबॉडी को इंक्यूबेट किया, ठीक है, with antigen to be measured, normal antigen, or then you have an antigen coated plate. Now this will compete for binding to this antigen which is coated. ठीक है, क्लियर?
अच्छा पहला वाला जो है वो सैंपल है ना, टेस्ट
हाँ
सैंपल।
हाँ 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 हाँ,
हाँ
ये
ठीक है सर, समझ।
ये जो है, दिस इज अ एंटीबॉडी विथ एंटीजन, तो ये एंटीजन से ऑलरेडी ब्लॉक किया हुआ है इसमें, और कुछ है फाका, क्लीन है। हाँ, जो जो दोज हु हैव नॉट बाउंड, दे विल बाइंड ओवर हियर, ठीक है। यू आर बाइंडिंग इन कॉम्पिटेटिव द स्ट्रेंथ, कितना स्ट्रेंथ में बाइंडिंग हो रहा है, यू आर ट्राइंग टू मेजर दिस। फिर इसको इसके अंदर डाल दिया। नाउ हियर यू हैव द, ये वाला तो बाइंड नहीं कर पाएगा, विच हैव ऑलरेडी बीन इंक्यूबेटेड विद द एंटीजन। देखो एक कॉफ किया, हाँ, कॉफ में कितना, हाउ, व्हाट इज योर टाइटर, यू वांट टू नो हाउ मच वायरस इज देयर और हाउ मच बैक्टीरिया इज देयर। सो उसको एंटीबॉडी के साथ बाइंड किया। अगर हल्का इन्फेक्शन है तो ओनली सम ऑफ दिस एंटीबॉडीज विल बाइंड, ठीक है। और अगर बहुत ज्यादा है, सब एंटीबॉडी बाइंड कर जाएगा एंटीजन के साथ, ऑल आर ब्लॉक्ड। तो ये वाला यहाँ पे बाइंड नहीं कर पाएंगे, ओनली दोज हु आर फ्री दे विल बाइंड, एंड यू डिटेक्ट द वंस व्हिच आर फ्री एंड बाउंड। अब समझ में आया कॉम्पिटिटिव एलाइजा?
हाँ हाँ यस सर।
तो बेसिकली जो फालतू है, मतलब जो मतलब जो कितना इन्फेक्शन हुआ तुम्हारा लंग्स में, वो मेजर कर रहे हैं। वो तुम्हारा स्पुटम लिया, वो एंटीबॉडी से मिक्स कर दिया, अगर खूब हेवी इन्फेक्शन है, हाँ, तो सब एंटीजन एंटीबॉडी बाइंड हो जाएगा, एंड ये एंटीजन कोटिंग वेल पे देयर विल बी नो बाइंडिंग, क्योंकि ऑल ब्लॉक्ड है, ठीक है। अब जब वॉश कर दिए, ये ब्लॉक्ड है, तो इसमें तो अटैच नहीं रहेगा, ये तो वॉश करके निकल जाएगा, तो ये फाका रहेगा और यहाँ पे कोई कलर नहीं डेवलप करेगा। यू आर वॉशिंग, सो दोज हु आर नॉट बाउंड टू दिस प्लेट, वो लोग निकल जाएगा, ठीक है। दिस इज वाई यू नीड टू वॉश। अगर फॉर एग्जाम्पल इफ यू डोंट वॉश एंड ऐड, तो सब एक कलर में है, तो ऑब्वियसली यू विल ऑलवेज गेट अ कलर। सो सैंडविच एलाइजा ये सब तो हो गया, प्रोटोकॉल तो ये नहीं चाहिए। यू हैव सीन, दिस इज एलाइजा हो गया। अब आरआईए में आते हैं, लेट अस, ऐसे दिखता है ऑन द प्लेट्स, डिफरेंट डाइल्यूशंस यूज किया है एंटीजन या एंटीबॉडी के। एलाइजा प्लेट, सब यू नीड एलाइजा मशीन, इंक्यूबेटर, यहाँ पे एलाइजा इंक्यूबेट करना पड़ता है फॉर एंटीजन एंटीबॉडी अप्रोप्रिएट बाइंडिंग, एंड यू नीड दिस माइक्रो, दिस रीडर, एलाइजा रीडर, माइक्रोटाइटर प्लेट रीडर, बहुत जगह यूज होता है। दीज आर द प्लेसेस वेयर यूज टू डिटेक्ट माइकोबैक्टीरियम इन ट्यूबरकुलोसिस, रोटावायरस इन फीसेस, हेपेटाइटिस। सो बेसिकली डिजीज डिटेक्शन एंड क्वांटिफिकेशन में काम आता है। देन यू हैव रेडियो इम्यून एसे। So it was developed by Burson and Yellow in 1956 for the quantitative measurement of insulin in human plasma. You're basically quantifying it. Radioimmunoassay principles have been found wide applications in the field of drug analysis, kinetic studies, immunodiagnosis. So it is specific, sensitive, and rapid. It is an immunoassay. It is a test that uses antibody and antigen complex as means of generating a measurable result. An antigen antibody complex is known as immune complex. So principle is, it is a competitive binding assay. The antibody and labeled antigen are always present as limiting factors. So you have a radio labeled antigen and an antibody, and one antigen is radio labeled and one antigen is not radio labeled. So they are always competing for, you mix them, and they are always competing for the antibody. So it is used to estimate ligand. So labeled antigen plus specific antibody, you have a labeled antigen antibody complex. Okay? To that you add unlabeled antigen. Then what you get is unlabeled antigen antibody complex. So depending upon how much label is there, that much amount of radioactive uh, it is detected. So unbound labeled antigen and normal antigen, they are washed. Only the radioactivity of the bound residue is measured, and the ligand concentration is inversely relation to the radioactivity. So जितना radioactive signal मिलेगा, ligand उतना ही कम है. Because अगर ligand bind कर गया, the antigen, if it has bound, then all unbound radioactivity is going to be washed away. Clear? Same like ELISA. Only you are using radio labeled antibodies. Clear? Clear? Yes, no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sab yes, sir to? Purnali no, sir? না ইয়েস স্যার, আমি পড়তে পাচ্ছি না। পর্ণালী
Yes, sir.
ইয়েস স্যার লিখেছে তো? ওকে, ঠিক আছে। So this is a radio labeled antibody reagent. This is the analyte in specimen, maybe a cough or blood or whatever, and you add them, mix them, you get a antibody analyte complex. So labeled antibodies allow detection of antigen antibody complex in immunoassays. So then to that you add, this is the other way around, antibody which is not labeled, antigen which is labeled. You get this. So these are all the ways by which you these are the procedures, how you use it. These are the instruments. You need a Geiger-Müller counter for measuring the radioactivity counts. And you draw a curve. এটা পড়তে হবে না. Just merits, demerits, principle. That's all. So clear? বুঝতে পেরেছো? समझ में आया सबको?
Yes, sir.
ওকে, এটা পাঠিয়ে দিয়েছি, এটা পড়ে নিও। আমি আবার তোমাদের নোটস গুলো পাঠিয়ে দেবো, আর একটা নোট আছে আমার, সেটা পাঠিয়ে দেবো। তবে এইটা আগে পড়ে ফেলো, फटाफट फटाफट हो जाएगा ये, देख के फटाफट कर लो, ठीक है? স্যার কম্পিটিটিভ এলাইজাতে যে কোয়ান্টিটিটা পাচ্ছি ওটা ইনভার্ট করলে হবে তো শেষে? হ্যাঁ 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 হ্যাঁ, হবে হবে। That is because the more ligand which binds, the less of bound radioactive antibodies you will find. So যত রেডিও অ্যাক্টিভিটি পাবে মানে তত কম লাইগ্যান্ড, যত কম রেডিও অ্যাক্টিভিটি পাবে মানে বেশি লাইগ্যান্ড। ঠিক আছে, উল্টো। ক্লিয়ার? ठीक है, बाय बाय।